Hi everyone, and welcome to 3D Stories, the show where we interview businesses in 3D printing to see what makes them tick and the keys to their success. Today we're talking with Andre from Splash and Color over on Amazon. He's built a successful business selling practical 3D prints and products over on Amazon, solving real problems with 3D printing. Hi Andre, how are you today?
Doing very well. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Can you hear me? If you had to explain your business to somebody that's not an entrepreneur and doesn't know 3D printing, how would you describe it? Like to your parents?
Best way I would say is I sell online consumer goods. It's probably the easier to describe it on the internet.
And I have to wonder, because selling on Amazon is not exactly easy. And selling 3D printed parts to begin with is non-trivial. So how did your entire adventure in selling 3D printed parts start? And how did the brand take shape?
Well, we started where I think most people start, and it's probably the best place to begin. Was on these platforms that are a bit easier, the Etsy's and eBay's of the world. We make it quite easy to list something. They have customers already built in. This is really where we started. We started selling the parts over there. And I forgot the second part of your question. I apologize.
How did the brand take shape? Was the first sale that you got through the current brand, or did you start selling way before the current brand?
Well, sure. That's interesting. It was actually, we were in the acrylic paint pouring niche. The company is called Splash and Color for that very specific reason. And the reason I really got into it, and I saw someone selling a very simple, almost circular shape with a cutout. So you can think of like a cup that you can pour liquid into and pour. Mm-hmm. Very simple. At the time, I did not know how to design at all, but I could design that thing. And I saw that someone was selling that for like $29. And I could do the calculation in my head, like this is 50 cents, $1 in material. And so why not sell the same thing? And hence, I saw an opportunity in that niche. And as most people do when they start, they see something working and they do the same thing. That's how I got started in the acrylic paint pouring niche. And specifically, like I mentioned, on Etsy and eBay, it's the best place to start.
Do you remember your first orders, the first people that got your cup thingy?
Yeah, it was November 2019. Either November or December. I was in South Florida. Time I was in college, away from family, but because it was near the holidays, I had actually traveled to my sister's house to stay there for a couple of weeks. And I brought my printers with me, of course. And I received an order for, I think it was 2 or 3 parts. It's like a $60 order. It's my very first order. And I was a bit like, wow, like this is cool.
Wow.
And so I still remember, I still remember that to the day. It was, either November, December. It was, felt quite good. It was the very first time making a sale.
That's amazing. If you had a brag slide for your 3D printing journey, not even necessarily Splash and Color, just a pure bragging rights, what would be there? What would be written up there?
I thought about it. I thought about this the other day. So here's my answer. It might not be super traditional. I probably wouldn't have one. I don't think bragging leads to many positive things coming toward the business. I think it could only, when you see people online call it like the build in public, for example, they're boasting things about their business. They're inviting competition to come in, and downside, there's just tremendous downside, no upside. I wouldn't have a bragging slide, period, because that can only lead to negative things. And I have a pretty deep experience of that in the future and learned my lesson. And so I wouldn't brag. Good things that I have, I generally keep to myself. And I found that that's probably the best way to go about things.
That's a very entrepreneurial answer. Let me put it this way. What would you be most proud of you personally? Not something that would be public about the company necessarily. And it doesn't even need to be something that the brand did. It can be a process that you figured out.
Yeah. No, that's great. What I would be most proud of is the perseverance, the persistence, and the constant adaptation. And to give a little bit of context there, our competitive advantage from 2019, 2022 was technology. Simple as that. Back in the day, the realities of the day, you had to level your bed and all this nonsense. 90% of the people would give up because it was too difficult. You fast forward to 2022, the Bamboo Labs came out. more or less became plug and play. So now we no longer had that competitive advantage. And then, so from 2022 to 2024, really, we had an informational competitive advantage. While most people were selling on certain platforms, we decided to shift it to Amazon. At the time, there was nobody selling on that platform. If you did any sort of research and you happen to find something about Amazon, people were just talking crap about it, saying, oh, it sucks, it has all these fees, there's all these problems. I'm not the type to just read something and go with the crowd. I think for myself. And in my mind, I figured, well, isn't it the largest marketplace? And why wouldn't I try for myself to see how it actually is? This is how I operate. I think for myself, for life in general. And so I went to that. And the truth is, Amazon saved the entire business because at the time, it's part of a much longer story. But one of my best friends got into our category, started selling the same thing, pricing it so low that he went out of business 2 years later. But doing that saved the business. Now, from 2024 to 2025, Amazon is a common sales channel today. This is no longer competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So it was really outsourcing the manufacturing. We have production partners over in China. Unit economics are pretty difficult to beat in general. And even beyond now, what we were building for the future is, okay, how do we streamline all our process and automation and use these AI tools such as Cloud Code, Cursor to make the business have operational excellence, operational efficiency. And that will be a competitive advantage for the rest of 2025 and 2026. So to sum all of this up, what I am proud of is, number one, starting something from scratch. You could really have to work like hell for the first 2 or 3 years, but also being able to adapt and understanding that business is always changing. Your competitive advantage is always changing. And if you think that you're going to stay still and do the same thing within 1 year, you're going to be in big trouble. So that is what I would be proud of as a business in whole.
That's definitely an amazing insight into the experience of a company that I think at the moment is by far the longest existing company selling 3D prints that we've interviewed, or that we've even interviewed generally, not even in the series. And it shows the grit needed to actually succeed in this space. So your products are fairly, let's put it another way. How would you describe your products? Because you have many different products, but how do you choose them? What products do you have?
Sure. To help answer the questions, it's important to understand we did get started in 2019. The machine capabilities were very different than they were today. Multi-prints were not really existent. You technically could if your part, had X amount of layers and maybe the top layers was a different color and you manually switched it. And we did a lot of that for some products. But for the most part, it was one color. And so if you come from that background and you build a business from that, we focus specifically on functional parts that solve a solution. So nothing aesthetic, nothing pretty, no widgets, no toys, things of this nature. Because again, back then, we did not have these capabilities. And this is how we built the business. If I were to start the business over today, it would be wildly different. Toys are a gigantic TAM. A sea turtle in the USA is a sea turtle in UK, is a sea turtle in China, right? So it's like you can sell globally rather than just nationally. And like it's just an infinitely bigger market. Selling functional parts, tolerance is really very important. So, the materials could make or break the product as far as returns and reviews. The printing calibration can make or break the product. Geographically can make or break the product. If I sell them out for a certain type of speaker, well, in Asia, they have that speaker, but it's a bootleg version. And because that geometry is half an inch different, my product won't work for that. And so if I had to, again, sum it up, we do functional parts for the USA market, generally a single color, but that was the foundation of the business. But I just want to make note for people listening today, there are these multi-color capabilities, which I would probably focus on that because there's infinitely more opportunity there. But we just do functional parts, one color.
Since your current store is only on Amazon, how do customers find you? Or rather, even who are your main customers?
Well, That's the beauty of selling on platforms. If you're on a platform, you don't own the customer. You don't have the customer's data. You don't have the customer's email. You don't have the direct ways to message them. And so I don't think of it as who are my customers. My customer is in a platform with Amazon. They have aggregated the whole market of customers. And so simply, if you look at the data of what people are searching for and you make your product and you put it there, they have the customers. And so one analogy to help maybe someone understand what I'm trying to communicate is if you were to set up shop, like a stand with a table, with products in the middle of Antarctica, and you just sit there and hopes to make a sale, you're not going to do very well. You have to drive your own traffic, right?
Yeah.
So that's analogous to selling on your own website, and that's done through marketing, paid ads, etc. If you sell on a sales channel, like Etsy, eBay, Amazon, or any of these other places, they already have the customers there. That is the equivalent of signing up for a flea market show that many people are going to go to. You pay to host your stand there because they're bringing in the customers. And if you were to set up there, you can just sit there and there's tons of people coming in and out, and you will make sales without needing any effort, essentially. So that is the clear distinction. And so our customers are not necessarily, at least for us in what we do, I don't think of it as for our customers because we have a wide-ranging catalog. We're not focused on a specific niche today. We sell on Amazon's platform. Amazon takes care of acquiring the customers. That's how we do things, which again is very different from if you did focus on a specific category because you can market to them and bring them onto Amazon. But since we have a very wide catalog, you can't market everything. Otherwise, you're Walmart, for example, which if you're not in the USA, it's just a convenience store that sells everything for a very low cost, and you're not going to beat them in price.
So since you're not targeting a specific niche, how do you come up with the products and how do you choose from all the many ideas since you cover so many different niches?
Yeah, great question. We are foundationally from the beginning, we're a data-driven company. And so we look at numbers. When I'm doing market research for what products should I sell, I don't look at the products. And the reality is the things that we sell, I generally don't know what they are or what they do at all. And a lot of times I don't even pick them. Our team members will pick them. Just we have very clear criteria. If anything starts catching fire and selling, then I take interest. And then I take a closer look. And then I see, interesting, this is what it does. And it's for this. And then we optimize the listing a little more. But for the majority of the part, we look at numbers. I look everything through data, through sales velocities, through the historical. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? How many units is it selling on a 7-day basis, 14-day basis, 30-day basis, the past 6 months, 12 months? Is this trending up, trending down? Is this seasonal? Is this evergreen? I see numbers, and that's how I run the business.
And that's how you've survived so many years. You've mentioned the competitive advantage that you have has changed along the years. What's your current one? Or what do you consider is your current advantage from your competitors?
I would say, now I wouldn't say this is an advantage as opposed to everybody, but I would say it's an advantage opposed to most people, is that a lot of people coming into this game, they really like the idea of buying machines and creating print farms as they can manufacture themselves at very low cost and they can pay back that machine and they have full control. We actually don't have a print farm. I like the idea of something that's called farmless 3D printing, meaning you don't need any machines and you can get the parts produced for you. So we have partnership over in China, in Guangzhou. I traveled there last April to meet our production partners in person and establish that business relationship. We've been working together for about 18 months now. And so we don't produce our products. Meaning I no longer have to play technician. And what I mean by that is when you have a print farm, the more machines you have, every little problem will compound and take more time for you to do. Even unloading the plates, if you have 40, 50, 60 machines, that's going to take you 30 minutes to just unload the stuff. And so our time is not allocated towards being a machine operator or a technician, but we can allocate it in different directions. Whereas most people have print farms, they like the idea of having print farms. So at the moment, as opposed to a lot of sellers, I would say that is one competitive advantage. And a second one I would also say is still quite early. but it's really utilizing these agentic coding tools to look at the current
Mm-hmm.
operations and see what can we automate, what can we do better. And I imagine if I had to, my intuition says if you're running a print farm, you probably don't have as much time to allocate into learning and developing these new skills, which I think is infinitely more valuable than running a print farm. No offense to anyone who loves print farms. When I first started, I loved it too. But today I want to stay as far away from these machines as possible and give that burden to someone else. Really the AI could help and your partner, your friendly partners. But so it's really that shift. It's where you're allocating your time, and where you're allocating your time are the skill sets that you're building valuable over time, and do they compound? And I think maybe most people don't really think of that at that level to that degree. So it's those two things, I would say.
Yeah, you have to focus on what's scalable, and running a print farm can get you very good money, but it's not scalable, and definitely not after a certain glass ceiling. You can't really scale a print farm anymore.
Yeah,
Or
I
you
think
would
it's
have to relocate and dedicate all your time to having a print farm.
yeah, it's quite linear, right? More machines you need, more overhead, more labor, um, et cetera, et cetera. Some people love it. There's some business doing really well with 200, 300 machines. And they do very well. They even have sales forces pushing their products. There are businesses doing very, very well. So it really depends. Every business is very, very different.
I find it very interesting that you have your production partner in China. Most folks in 3D printing are very scared of either being copied in China or even talking to possible production partners up there. How did you come to that decision?
It was very slowly. We've worked with our production partners it was 10 months where we were giving them 10% of our total production, if you will. We're doing 90% in-house, 10% to them. And it really was a matter of building that trust over time. And when production for me personally was painful enough that I just wanted that out of my life, it's a risk, of course, but I was willing to give that risk there. And if the company blows up, it blows up. And I'm okay with it. Because that's to the degree that he wants to manage a print farm. And that's really
Yeah.
the progression to that. And what I would say too is that I think you mentioned some people might be scared of them, copying your product, your IP gets leaked. And the reality of the situation is if you choose to sell on these platforms, you're going to get copied anyways. These sellers, if you make any sort of meaningful revenue on any SKU or product, they're going to buy your product. They're going to 3D scan it. They're going to reverse engineer it. And they're going to sell your exact thing in a multi-pack for half the cost. And if you even try to entertain selling at the same price point or below them, they will just go straight to the bottom. Any profits get competed away from the business owners. The consumer is the only one that wins. And at the end of the day, no one will make money besides the consumer. So if you're scared of being copied, I got news for you. You're going to get copied anyways. And so that's what it is. That's just the honest truth.
Yeah, you can't be both successful and not be copied at the same time. So, since you've moved the print farm operations away from you, what does a day-to-day workload look like nowadays?
Yeah, I would say what I focus my time on, I wouldn't say I'm full-time on the business today. I might spend 20 hours a week, maybe 25. There are some weeks where I'll crank that way up, but I'm less consistent on day-to-day basis, and I'm more of a sprint and then stop and then sprint. But specifically, what I spend a lot of my time on is using these agentic coding tools and agents and applying that across every single step of the business operations. There's something like 15 steps, so like A to Z, with 15 things. And each step, it's its own little micro world with a ton of nuances behind it. And so I try to tackle each one and build tools for that to get the maximum amount of leverage. So today, that is where I spend the majority of my time.
How many people are in your team?
A few months ago, there was myself and 2 full-time team members. They were managing pretty much the entire operation. Last month, it was me and 1 full-time team member. We were able to essentially automate one of the team members' jobs away. And I'd be happy to have trained him, but honestly, he wasn't a very strong team member anyways, and he wasn't going to be with the company very long. But it's the truth. But it was just myself and one other team member today at the present moment. It's just me because one of our full-time team members, he just started college. And quite frankly, what he was doing inside the company would not help him on the long term. I don't want him to be successful. He's been with the company for a year. He used to live in the Philippines. He's now studying in the USA, a full ride scholarship. The company will take a hit, or in terms of my time, we'll take a hit in the moment. But right now, it is just myself.
That's amazing to have a functional company on what's basically a part-time job, because you've automated so many things out of it.
Yeah, there is that too. But there is also something to be said for, the business has been established for 6 years. And so every year kind of stacks on top of each other. And, you can get to a point more or less where it's, you have enough recurring revenue, if you will, where it's, I think, when you first start a business, the first 2 or 3 years, it really is like launching a rocket. The vast majority of the effort and power is going to come on that initial stage. But once that rocket's off the ground, you just have to maintain it. If you think of a hula hoop, once it's going, you just gotta slowly just keep that fire burning. And so that's the stage I'm currently at today. And I can choose to accelerate, decelerate, keep it steady. I have these levers to pull. But that's because we've been in business for 6 years. But that's not necessarily what you do for a starting up. It's very different. It's seasons of business.
Yeah, starting out, you work yourself to the bone. Out of what you're doing right now, of your tasks, what's your favorite and which one do you hate the most?
My favorite would be using these agentic tools to streamline operations. I like to have minimal inputs, very little inputs, and maximal output. If I can do that in any single part of the business, I enjoy that. And what I enjoy even more is the fact that I know that I'm learning a new skill set that I think will compound over the years. So it's really that. It's the learning, but it's the allocating my time into something that's valuable. So I enjoy that very much. Now, on the other side of that, the complete opposite side of that, absolutely hate, is anything that's not that, meaning day-to-day operations. Let's create a product listing. Like, okay, shoot me. Like, this is annoying. I've had moments in the business where we're ready to launch 20 to 30 new products. They're manufactured, quality controlled. They have the images. Everything is ready. It just needs the listing. And I refuse to do the listing myself. I will hire someone, even if it takes a month and a half. Literally, I will hire someone for them to do that, because at a certain point in life, it's just not worth the time. Maybe I'm trading dollars for that, but finances are not the number one priority in my life today. Not even close. I've been there. When you don't have money, it means everything to you. When you have it, it doesn't mean much, and then the more you have it, the less it means. And I'm just at a different stage today. And so I refuse to do these things. To give you some context, we're ready to launch like 16 new products. They're ready to go. Why aren't they launched? Well, I'm putting up job descriptions. I'm not making the listings. And so I hate doing that. They're literally manufactured, ready to go.
Wow.
But I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that. I'm finding the right person that'll do that for me. That's what I hate. I hate doing things that are not valuable, that will not compound over time, because I feel like I think everything in life compounds, and I don't like allocating my time into these sorts of stuff for where the business and I guess where I am today. And that's the truth.
Yeah, and it shows. That's amazing. Just having 60 products ready to go, just the listings, and having the ability and the conscious decision that it's a good decision to just hire somebody to do it and wait for somebody else to do it.
Well, it's costing me money.
It's a very smart thing.
It's not.
Like, it's costing money anyway. It's either your time or their time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trade. It's not a good business decision, I'll put it that way, but it's a good personal decision, and it's good for my soul, and it helps me enjoy life a bit more, I guess, knowing I'm putting my time into something that is somewhat meaningful.
I'm not 100% certain it wouldn't be a very smart business decision. Because your time is technically the most valuable, much more valuable than an employee's. Speaking of things to do and not to do, what would be the biggest lesson you've learned the hard way? So what would be the biggest failure and what you learned from it?
No, that's a good one. This goes back to, our initial conversation, really kind of like the bragging. One of the most painful things I learned in many different dimensions was if you have something good or something great going on, it's not always the best thing to brag about and boast publicly. So I had a best friend in college. He was a mechanical engineer, one of the best designers and mechanically inclined person I've ever met to this day. Just one of those kids where he's 10 years old. He lived in Cuba and his washing machine or dry machine, maybe the government confiscated something. He was able to build it and make it work. He's just fantastic mind. It's a very long story, but I was listening to an audiobook in California, which is on the west coast of the United States, driving to Florida, which was in the complete opposite side on the east. And the audiobook, it really emphasized like, hey, your accomplishments, what you're getting done, like make sure you shout that out to the world because the world needs to know your success and what you're doing, your credibility. And, maybe there's something to that at a certain stage of life or depending on the business you're at. But I went ahead and did that and started posting all over my Instagram stories, pictures, what I'm doing, writing long captions. I was high off just adrenaline of, quote unquote success. First time ever seen success. And that caused people to kind of look like, oh, what is this person doing? Wow, he's doing that. But long story short, my best friend at the time, he was pretty miserable doing an internship. He was working in the middle of nowhere with like people he didn't like. And he was calling me like really, he's not in good, he didn't enjoy life. He's calling me having trouble. And I'm like, bro, like, why don't you just get into this? Like, I barely know how to design. I was able to get into this little niche. I was able to do this and find some sort of success. Best fucking designer I've ever met. You crush it. And I gave him an hour of my time telling him exactly what to do, A to Z, a full playbook sequentially. His girlfriend, I guess, was on the call, or at least listening in. And rather than going into, any other category besides my very particular one, there's no other categories to go to, they decided to go into my exact same niche, which was the acrylic paint pouring, and just absolutely make incredible designs, incredible innovation, and sell it for absolutely nothing. To the point where they made six figures in the first 12 months. And essentially my business almost died. And so we had to completely pivot what we were doing. But that was a very painful lesson. And my takeaway from that was, I don't necessarily like to brag and share with the public and like, start beating my chest like, oh, I'm so great. I do this and that. I think now if you have something good in life, you generally keep it close to your chest, keep it close to yourself, because there are a lot of people out there that might look at what you're doing and maybe be a little envious, maybe like, wow, how is this person doing that? Like he's doing this, I could do that. Like he doesn't have the skills. Like if he can do that. And a lot of the times, I've heard this story over and over again from different people, even of friendships, which even sucks. Like, forget the business side. Like, I don't care. Today, I don't care about that. But I lost a really great friend from that betrayal. And I've seen the story play over and over again, where you're new to business, you start something, you start having some sort of success, start putting it out there. And then, who's the ones that really, like, fucks you over, excuse my language? It is, like, the best friend. And so that's probably the biggest pain or failure, I would say. So it was a good learning lesson early on because in the grand scheme of life, the cost for a nominal dollar perspective was a very small amount relative to, let's say, this thing was way more valuable and now I lost way more. At the time, it was a lot. So to discover that early was a blessing in disguise. But I very unfortunate to lose a really good friend.
Yeah.
And so
that's a horrible thing for the next to happen.
Yeah. So life was not great for the 2 years after that. And just with the understanding that, I gave up everything, finished my degree, did not get a job. I was all in on this thing. And then to have someone just kind of that you're helping take it away from you with not knowing that, like, you bet your life on this thing. But, we persevered and made it through. But that is the biggest learning lesson that I would share to anyone. Keep things close to yourself. Things are good. I don't believe in a build in public. There's very much nuances. But in general, I think it's the biggest scam sold on the internet. Or if you're going to share stuff, share things from 6 months ago and do it that way.
Yeah, that's a horrible lesson to have to learn that way. And I'm assuming the answer to the next two questions will just be no, but I have to ask them on a matter of principle because I already planned them out. But I wanted to ask what the future holds in terms of already announced plans, or what can you share? Is there anything that doesn't invite challenge that you can share about the future plans?
Absolutely. With the future plan, I mean, I'm largely moving away from the 3D printing business, honestly. So my real answer with the future plan is the next 6 to 12 months is keep what we have going. I'm not necessarily trying to grow it. And if I put less time and it starts to decline, I'm completely okay with that. But I'm here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. I moved here to be in a concentrated place with very talented people. And so it's exploring what the new chapter in life looks like, whether it's going to hackathons and meeting people working on interesting things or problems and seeing what comes out of that. So it's either starting a new venture, I don't have any ideas in mind, so not that at the moment, or just being around really smart, talented, ambitious people. And if what they're interested, what they're working on is interesting to me, seeing if I can contribute and add value and keep Splash and Color on the side here as this, cash flow producing asset. And if it runs its course, it runs its course. And if I ever need to go back and grow it again, it's there. But it's not the main priority right now. Growth is not the priority in my life today as it relates to the company and as it relates to the 3D printing industry.
Would you be moving, if the opportunity presented, would you be moving into a different niche in 3D printing, or are you abandoning 3D printing altogether?
I mentioned earlier, I think there's a huge opportunity in the toy sector. It's such a large TAM, specifically these flexi toys that are not only toys, but they help to, de-stress, to like a de-stress reliever. I think there's a lot of value if someone were to create a AI generation model. There's companies already doing this, but it's not, I want to be able to type a sea turtle and give me 10 variations. And the output is very specifically constrained for DFAM, or designed for additive manufacturing, FDM specifically, such that it eliminates support materials or has very minimal support materials, such that it makes these little wiggly ways, if you will, and such that even the color changes, again, with the new color technology, it's all there. If that was possible and it could generate 1,000 different toys, I would send it all to our supplier. Hey, make 100 units of these 1,000 toys. I need 100,000 units. Make me 100,000 units. And then, since they're mostly toys, the listings, since they're not very different from each other, largely can be done in bulk with minimal changes. And I think that could have a low to maybe medium 7-figure annual revenue at 30% margins. So let's say you had a 5 million top line business doing that. You'd be making about $1.5 million net. And what are you really doing? I mean, you have your manufacturer, you have everything there. So it would really be maybe either building out this technology, or if someone has this technology, like, please reach out to me, because we have everything else. And even furthermore, like, if you have designs and you want to sell, like, you can literally, we have created the machine that we can put something inside and money flows out at the other side. But we need those designs, right? That sell. So I'd entertain that. And again, there's already models doing this, but they're not good. And it's a little earlier. And maybe working in that space, I'd be interested in, because the model shifts from a physical consumer good. That would be one arm of the business to a token generation model. So you can use this internally for yourself, but then you can also offer this globally to the world. And you're now selling tokens. And you're arbitraging the tokens. You can buy it from Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, Anthropic, whatever, for X dollars. And then you can sell it for X dollars in a productized manner, meaning you could go from 0 to 5 million ARR in a software business that's infinitely more valuable than a physical goods business. That type of business, I would definitely entertain and want to work with someone on, because I think you could definitely build a $5 million business at like 50 to 60%. No, call it like 70%, 70 to 80% gross margins. And then after, call it 50% net profit. So you could just, you could print out $2.5 million a year. And then the value of that business, let's say if it was making 5 million top line, software businesses are valued on on future earnings. So not necessarily EBITDA. So it's probably 8 to 10x multiple on that. So that $5 million business would be valued at 40 to $50 million if you wanted to sell it. So now you have a valuable asset that's generating cash. You could have a life-changing exit if you chose. Whereas a $5 million consumer goods business at, call it 30% net profit, it's $1.5 million. You might sell that at 3x multiples. So you might sell it for $4.5 million. So you see the difference of these businesses are wildly different.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
entertain
directly
that
a
business.
startup with evaluation and with everything. Yeah.
That's where
Thankfully,
I would
you're in the
entertain
right
that.
city for that.
Yeah, maybe there's something there that I would entertain. But as far as selling physical goods, I mean, we can do it, but it's it's not the long-term play.
It's a company. It's not a startup, right?
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
For those that are still interested in 3D printing, for the companies, not even necessarily the startups. Although there is a debate whether a startup can exist in physical 3D printing. Teleport, I think, is the only startup that I know of that got funded. Sorry, Slant 3D. That's the startup name. That actually got funding as a startup while managing a giant print farm. But back to the normal possibilities, what advice would you have for somebody dreaming of having a company in the 3D printing space? What advice would you have for them just starting out, or once they've already started out, how to continue and grow their stuff?
The advice really would be very hyper specific where they are today, where they want to be, what kind of outcome are they looking for? So I'd see what outcome are you interested in? And then the advice would really be tailored towards that. But let's say someone just starting out and they're just interested to get their foot in the door, just get started. You can buy a $150, $200 A1 Mini today. It's plug and play, and you could create your designs and start selling and paying it off right off the bat. And if you want to do this long term, I think a very valuable skill to have is learn how to design 3D model. You may not be the best at it in the beginning. It's somewhat of a learning curve. The more you do it, better you get at it, because you then can make quote unquote more proprietary designs, and you can focus on a certain niche, and you can focus on a certain customer segment. You can communicate with them, because you can sell on these platforms, but also, your own Shopify store. And because of that, you have a more valuable business rather than just selling on a platform. And a lot of the times they might tell you, or they might ask you, hey, this is amazing. Do you have this? And if you don't, you can design it yourself and then reach out, hey, look, we did it, but we made this just for you. And then you start getting repeat customers and, like I said, building a more valuable business. So I would say I would probably learn to design and start with a single machine. So that's if you're just starting out. That'd probably be my advice. Maybe, yeah, for new people. Now, if you're currently in the business, it's a little more difficult to give a generalized advice. Again, it's what outcome are you looking for? Are you looking to do this part-time forever and just have some income? Are you looking to do this transition full-time? What is the outcome? That's my advice for those two things would be wildly different.
Let's say for growing, because at least the engineers that I saw always want to go full-time into 3D printing as a dream job.
The way, now this is, I don't have practical experience here. So, this is just how I would do it if I was in that position. Again, I would make sure I'm focused on a certain category. I would make sure that the price point is somewhere between, it's a higher price point item, maybe $30 and above. And I would try to drive growth through Meta ads and see if I can grow it that way. Meta is,
okay,
you can have a very valuable business through that. And again, why I call it specifically a business is because you're selling on your own website. You're building up customers, an email list that you can then send SMS to. Most e-commerce businesses make 25 to 30% of their revenue through text and SMS alone. That tells you that is a repeat order, repeat customer. That's significant. So I would do that, and I would try to scale up through Meta, because that is how you get to 7 figures and above. And if you get to the point where you're 8 figures, now you're injection molding your things, you're creating packaging, you're making it into a non-3D printed product. You're playing a different game.
Yeah,
that's how I would grow. If you're trying to grow on different sales channels, sure, but also understand that it's 2 steps forward, a step and a half back, and it will always be that way, because the second you have a SKU that does any sort of revenues, there is going to be price compression very fast. And the people that you're competing with are subsidized by their current government. You do not pay taxes. So they sell something for $10, or put it this way. If you pay 20 to 30% tax on whatever you make, they don't even have that. Inherently, they can lose money and still beat you. So I would own my audience. I would own my platform. I would sell my own website. Then I would drive growth through sales and marketing. And I would drive its growth through meta ads, which also means that you'd have to be in a specific niche, which means that you should need to learn how to design and start engaging with those customers. That's how I would do growth. That's sustainable and durable for the long term. Otherwise, you're going to be on a hamster wheel, and your profits will get competed away. You can tell me it won't. Just talk to me in 2 to 3 years, and then we can reassess. I'd make a bet it would get competed away.
Yeah, you need to keep evolving. I want to also mention, partly as a shameless plug, that for the beginners, once you have your single 3D printer where you test your stuff, there are services out there where you can just connect your store and the service just prints the thing and sends it for you. You have your China shop. We operate a network of print farms across the world. We've just joined a print farm in Malaysia and one in India as well. Pretty much everywhere where English is spoken, from Australia to Canada. But it's worth looking at print farms even local to your city. So you can meet them in person, talk to them. In the US, I think the biggest and most worthwhile right now is called Teleport from Slantfree. I don't know about Canada, and I know that in resin printing, my mini factory has a pretty big print farm in the UK. That's not FDM, however. But yeah, it's worth automating as soon as you have your first prototypes. It's worth automating the work away. I'm still amazed that you managed to find a partner that you're confident in China. So that's definitely a lesson for myself.
There's always that risk there, right? But again, it comes with the caveat that if it were to all blow up, today I've come to peace with that. It's the risk I'm willing to take. And you're absolutely right. I think finding manufacturing partners, depending on where you're at, is very helpful because you can allocate that time to talking to your customers, creating new designs, sales and marketing, really things that grow the business rather than being stuck in operations, aka playing technician, fixing your extruder because you had a blob of death or whatever.
Mm-hmm. All right, that has been it. Thank you for watching. And if you have questions, put them in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for companies you'd like us to interview next, message us directly. All right. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
If I have just one request for the listeners. If you are a designer out there, you're struggling to make sales, you might even have some products that you're trying to sell, reach out to me. Maybe we'll link my email down below in the description. It's Andre@splashandcolor.com. That's the word splash, the letter N, the word color.com.